Good morning, everyone. Hope everybody had a great Memorial Day weekend. I know it was raining for the first part, but Memorial Day itself turned out really, really nice. I hope you got outside and enjoyed the weather. Before I get started here this morning, I do want to thank Marion. Marion was kind enough to buy me a apple fritter from McDonald's this morning. And if you've ever talked to Colleen or Marion or Janice, they know I don't like to eat anything prior to the meeting, but this will give me incentive to get the meeting over fairly quickly so I can go at my apple fritter. And the other thing I've noticed here on these calls as this thing has progressed this year, there's more and more people with their names on their screen, which tells me that they're either lounging around in pajamas or they're ashamed of how they're dressed at this point in time of the day. So for those of you that I actually see you, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay, once again, good morning. Colleen will be on the chat box. So if you have any questions or have any comments, please drop it in the chat box. Toward the end of this meeting, we're going to talk about some brands that I think we all know the brands, but it's interesting is what happened to them over time because of some missteps that they took. And I see it in relation to what has been going on in the real estate business for really the last 15 months, because we've undergone obviously some huge turmoil in the last 15 months in our business. And it's how we come out of this turmoil that will determine how well we're going to do, not only as agents and teams, but as companies and our whole business in general. So looking forward to sharing that with you. First up today is Dan and James, and they want to talk a little bit about a webinar that's coming up called Ask the Underwriter. So I'm not sure who's going to take it from here. Dan or James, you're up.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. So as you can see on the graphic here, we're doing a webinar where you can ask the underwriter questions and really get the answers on things that an underwriter would really know. We're doing this on Wednesday, June 23rd. It's going to be an hour long. If anybody is interested in it, I think it's a great learning tool. Definitely something that everybody can, take something from and, apply it to, a real world situation. So if you are interested in that, it's great. There was one for appraisals maybe a month ago or so, kind of a tester, and it went really well. So we want to expand this out and, get more people involved. And, if you're interested in this, please reach out to myself or Dan, and we can get you added to the invite list. And then, you can send us questions and we can send them into the underwriter and have your questions answered on the call. So it's a pretty cool thing that we're doing here. And, hopefully we can get a lot of participation and continue to do stuff like this, going forward. I don't know if Dan had anything.
Dan, do you have anything?
To talk about?
No, that's it.
Okay. Hey,
Right.
James, I don't want to assume that everybody knows what the purpose or role of an underwriter is. Could you just take a moment and share with the group? Most people know that when they apply for a loan, they're sitting down in front of you or James, or you or Dan, and you're taking the loan, but explain where the underwriter comes into play here.
So the underwriter's job is essentially to analyze the file, everything that Dan or myself, puts together and gets into the file, analyze the file, analyze the risk on the file, if it meets, requirements for the given programs. They go through everything, and ultimately they are the ones that say whether, they give the final stamp of approval, or in the unfortunate cases, if that ever happens, a denial on the file because somebody didn't, qualify. So it's their jobs to really go through line by line on the full application and make sure that, a borrower or buyer is truly, qualified and approved to purchase their home. So they're kind of godlike in that sense, where they, they're the ones that are going to give their stamp of approval or not on something, on a file. So that's really their job. They're the ones that once we send the file in to underwriting, there might be some extra items, you hear conditions that are needed to be cleared for the, final approval. They kick that back to us, and then we chase that stuff down and get it back to them for, for the ultimate final approval and clear to close. So that's their role in this. They know the guidelines for programs, top to bottom, front to back. So this webinar is a great tool for some of those kind of out there scenarios that maybe you come across or think up. This can be a really helpful tool to get those questions answered. Obviously, you can come to Dan or myself for a lot of that stuff as well. But it's good to kind of pick the brain of an underwriter here. It's going to be nice.
Thanks. Appreciate the background on that. Once again, get in touch with Dan or James if you want to register for that. When I send out the email probably tomorrow with all the information, I also will have a link that you'll be able to click and register via Zoom. And it is a Zoom call from what I understand. Is that correct, James?
We use WebEx.
Okay.
But same thing, same concept, yes.
Okay, very good. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Up next is Sarah with a home sale settlement.
Good morning. So I wanted to take a minute and just discuss how all of these creative contracts and ways to get your buyers the deal have impact or trickle down into titles. So one of the big things I've seen a lot lately, and I'm sure you have all heard about, Tom's talked about, is buyers paying all of the transfer tax. And it's very important, even though it's written on the agreement of sale, make sure that the title company that you're dealing with, as well as your lender, are fully aware that the buyer is paying the transfer tax in full, as it does affect the disclosures and what goes out, as well as many or any of the programs that your buyer may be utilizing to get a loan. Also, a lot of buyers are opting to get home warranties, and because there's no inspections being done, which is a great idea. However, a lot of lenders actually want to see those home warranty invoices when we add them onto the CD. So it's very important to get them ordered and over to the title company right away, because we need to produce them on the back end to some of the lenders who want proof as to what is being paid and why. And that's typically going for any invoice right now. A lot of lenders just want to see, hey, you're the seller, even if it's on the seller side, hey, you guys are paying ABC Contracting. We want to know why. We need an invoice for our file. So as things are getting creative and things are coming together to get the deals done, lenders are asking for a little bit more information from the title companies as of the proof that's on the CDs that we're sending to them. So I just want to bring that up. Make sure you guys get your invoices in. Make sure that the title company you're utilizing knows everything that needs to go on and on the CD. That's it.
Thanks, Sarah. Appreciate your help this morning. Up next is James with Homesale Insurance.
Good morning, everybody. Just have a quick thing regarding flood insurance that happened about 2 weeks ago. I just had one of the other agents at my agency who had a deal that got blown up because of it. But basically, he had let us know that effective May 18th, that some of the well, he says many of the FEMA flood zone maps have been revised. So if that's something that you guys have on one of your upcoming closings or something like that, I'm sure I'm sure you probably might have known about it already if in case it happened. But the flood maps did have a revision back on May 18th, 2021. So if you have something in there, might not hurt to double check that in case that's changed. So that was all I had for today.
And James, while you're still on, who would they check with when you say double check?
I could send out a link for the flood map viewing, basically, to see if the flood zone has changed by any chance. But
okay, if you want to provide that link to me, and that way when I send out the notes after the meeting, I'll include it with it.
okay.
Thanks much. Appreciate the update. Just want to tip my hat to the North Pointe office. I did put this out this past week, but just wanted to reemphasize it. We've done just an incredible job. You as agents and teams coming together, hopefully we're at the tail end of this COVID thing. We're now starting to get back to quote unquote some sense of normalcy. However, we're dealing with that low inventory market, as everybody knows. But just to let you know, the North Pointe office, we are categorized in the Berkshire Hathaway HomeServices franchise network as a large office. And we ended up being #1 in residential units in the Northeast region, #8 in residential units in the entire network, and #27 in gross commission income in the BHHS network. And by the way, this is for the first quarter of 2021. So you guys continue to keep doing an incredible job, and I tip my hat to you. Just a phenomenal job. In addition, our staff has done an incredible job in keeping up with all these things. They do a remarkable job, I think, as everybody is aware, on a day-to-day basis, processing our transactions. At times, they do get back in touch with you and say, hey, I'm missing this, I'm missing that. They do their best to stay on top of this stuff so that we can process things in a timely manner, and at the end of the day, get you paid in a timely manner. So congratulations to everybody in the office. Some individual teams were also recognized. The Mark Will team for the first quarter was 3rd place in PA in residential units. And by the way, they are considered a medium team. They were 5th place as far as residential units in the US, and also 20th place amongst medium teams for gross commission income, singular. And then Craig Hartranft and his team, they were #1 as far as residential units in Pennsylvania. They were 2nd place in GCI in Pennsylvania. They came in 5th overall in the United States and 7th overall in the US with GCI. So congratulations to Mark and his team, Craig and his team, and once again, the entire office. We're just doing a bang up job, and big thanks to everyone. Wanted to make sure you did see this. There was an email that came out last week that talked about teams. And if you're thinking about starting a real estate team, is it right for you? And we get a lot of these questions as managers. People will sit down with us and say, hey, what's it like? Or how do I go about doing this? We've kind of formalized this a little bit in that we're going to be putting on a Zoom webinar on Monday, June 7th from 10 to 11. And once again, I will include a link with the notes that I send out that talk about how to start a team and what you should consider when you're starting a team. Keep in mind that all teams are structured, as you may or may not be aware, differently. Some teams are very, very well structured. Other ones are a little looser than that. There's no right or wrong way to do it. There's some common threads, though, to running a team if you are contemplating becoming a team leader. So I'll send out this link. Right now, I think we have 20 to 30 people registered for this, anywhere from team leaders to team members to individual agents. It's something that we wanted to put on the table to you and make sure that you're aware of it.
Hello, Homesale. Regina Koya here. I hope you had a fabulous Memorial Day weekend. I'd like to start off this new week with a couple of questions for you, some food for thought. So what if you could increase your income per hour and still have a life outside of the real estate business? What if you had a system to attract clients rather than always having to pursue them? And what if you finally reached your full potential? Well, now you can. Ninja Installation is coming to Homesale August 23rd through the 26th. Save the date. It is a 4-day intense course where you will learn to take your business and your life from wherever you are to wherever you want to be. Stay tuned for details in the coming weeks. Save the date once again, August 23rd through the 26th. Welcome to the Ninja Path.
Now, for those of you that participated in the, I'll call the abbreviated sessions that we had, I think there were 4 sessions. We got great reviews from those of you that participated in this. A lot of good information came out of it. This ninja selling and what Regina is talking about here, this is called an installation for those that want to get involved on a much deeper level with ninja selling. It's a very high-end productive course. It's going to be run once again from August 23rd through the 26th. It's going to be held at the Heritage Hills Resort in York, PA. By the way, Heritage Hills is real easy to get to. It's easy off and on the interstate that runs through York. They are going to be full day sessions. We are going to have some information coming out to you a little bit later on if you want to participate as far as costs are concerned. In addition, because they are full day sessions and some people don't want to travel back and forth, we are going to reserve a block of rooms for those that would like to stay overnight and stay on site. So stay tuned for more details regarding ninja selling. I also will include a link for everybody, and I usually put this out once a year. This is the cost to value report that's put out once a year, and it is specific to different geographic parts of the country. Now, it's especially a useful document to use when we are dealing with, I'll call it a much more normal, balanced market. In the market that we're in right now, where you're putting homes in the market for 300 and they're selling for 350, it might not be as valuable a tool, but as anybody who's been in this business for quite some time, you will find that the market will shift. And when it shifts, you're going to have people where the homes will be on the market for longer than what they are right now. And they're going to start looking at you and asking you questions. And one of the things that comes up quite often is, yeah, but Colleen, I put in this brand new bathroom and I spent X amount of dollars on it. Doesn't that account for anything? This report will help you talk to your sellers about being realistic with some of the things that they're adding to their home. Once again, I will put a link to the PDF for this because I just came across my email this past week and I downloaded the report for Lancaster County. So it's a very nice report. It's put out by Remodeling Magazine. They get lots of input from builders, real estate agents as to what goes into this report. So it's very timely and I highly recommend utilizing this. Also had some interesting questions come up over the last 2 weeks. I thought I'd share some of these with you, and I'm getting my answers here from Dean Peffley, who is with our title division. Dean's also an attorney. This one came up. Can a seller leave their security cameras on during showings? Now, everybody should be aware at this point in time, a couple months back, they added a brand new clause to both the listing contracts and also the agreements of sale called recordings on the property or the Internet of Things. And I've highlighted the area here. that came into play on this. It says any person who intentionally intercepts oral communications by electronic or other means without the consent of all parties is guilty of a felony under Pennsylvania law. Let me stop there. The key part here is oral communications. The one thing I learned in, I think 2 sales meetings ago, maybe it was 3, I played a short clip having to do with the discrimination case in Long Island, and part of that recording there dealt with New York laws and regulations about what you can and can't do with security cameras. And as you are aware, during those discrimination cases, people were wearing hidden cameras and recording things. Well, Pennsylvania has a little bit different laws than New York, and I thought I'd share them with you because it will come into play with listings and also with your buyers that tour property. Here's the first thing. It is legal in Pennsylvania to conduct video monitoring as long as there is no nudity or private activity. So if you have somebody that has security cameras throughout their house, on the exterior of their property, they do not need to turn them off. It is okay in Pennsylvania to keep those video cameras on. However, it is illegal to record sound without consent in Pennsylvania. So if you have these video monitoring devices in one of your listings, as long as you turn the sound off, you're okay. Nadine's suggestion, which I think is a good one, because a lot of people will interpret these clauses differently, is he suggests adding a clause to the agent remarks in the MLS saying 24/7 video monitoring on property. Once again, these laws are a little bit different from New York, and they're different than other states across the country. I wanted to make you aware of what applies in Pennsylvania, because I believe we're going to start encountering this more and more in the very near future, if not already. The second question that came up with Dean, excuse me, is what should an agent do if they suspect that a potential client has mental challenges? I think if you're in this business long enough, I know myself personally, I've dealt with this in the past in some of my real estate transactions, where I have a question as to whether the person I'm dealing with really understands what I'm talking about. The one thing that Dean did say is don't play doctor. You're an agent. Don't go in there and, start asking questions. It's what you visually and actually listen to the person, what they're saying, and are they acting okay? I think everybody is aware that, if you've been in front of enough people with mental challenges, they'll start repeating themselves, saying things that will cause question to you as a layperson and who an agent is. Dean's suggestion is try to ascertain if there is a family member you can work with. Ask the individual that you're dealing with, hey, can we get an additional member here, just so not only I'm talking with you, but I'm talking to somebody that you know and trust. And finally, Dean wanted to tell everybody contracts entered into with individuals with a reduced mental capacity are voidable. It doesn't mean they're void on the face. It means they're voidable, which means that if the individual comes back at a later point, could be all the way up until the date of settlement, if they say, listen, I want to throw in this transaction, they're entitled to do that. And by the way, you could run into trouble if they actually settle on the property and you were not, you didn't have your antenna up and didn't bring it to the attention of some people. So just wanted to make you aware. I got some input from Dean, and I thank him for providing that input to agents here in the office. And by the way, while I'm talking about the subject, as a manager, I can handle a lot of questions because I'm old and I've heard a lot of stuff. But every once in a while, it really helps to have an attorney on staff that I can go to and say, hey, Dean, can you give me your advice on this? Or Bill, can you shed some light on this topic? It really helps to have them in-house for us.
Hey, Tom, I'm going to jump in real quick if you don't mind. Bob Rose asked a question.
Sure.
Was curious, what if there isn't any family? Is that something that a friend, like what do you do in that situation?
By the way, that's a great question. And let me go back to this. That's the topic that came up because the agent said, listen, they did ask if there was a family member that we could talk to, and the person that they were talking to had no family member that was close by. In Dean's estimation at that point in time, they said, listen, you really need to make good, copious notes, maybe have another person who's an independent person, have another agent there, take notes about what's going on so that you don't go back at another point in time and end up in a situation where it was just the client and you in the room. Try to have a third party there. It's a great question. And sometimes you don't have those additional family members. So, okay. Also wanted to share with you the National Association of Realtors Housing Affordability Index. Now, you may have seen this, but probably glazed over because there's a lot of numbers in the Housing Affordability Index, and I'll try to make it as simple as possible for you. And the reason why I bring this up, I am hearing more and more from people, and I think I've been saying it over the last couple of meetings, who think we're in this large bubble that we're about to implode as far as real estate is concerned, because home prices are going up and they're going up and going up, and there's no end in sight. And at some point in time, something's going to happen. Well, the Housing Affordability Index is put out by the National Association of Realtors, and it encompasses not only just looking at prices of homes, as you see it on the far left-hand side, they take a look at where mortgage rates are at a given point in time. They take a look at what the monthly principal and interest payment would be, and what percentage that payment is of a person's actual income. And what is the median family income as time goes on versus what the qualifying income is. All of this, you put all this stuff together, you kind of mix it around, and you come up with an affordability index. The higher the index, the better it is for the housing industry. So let me share some of these numbers that I said that may glaze you over, and I'll try to make it as simple as possible. Here's how things stood in 2018. Once again, using those same categories, I'm not going to read each one, but they have their own little formula here, and they plug it in. The affordability index is 146.3, which is good. They basically said anything higher than 100% or 100 is pretty good. So 146.3 back in 2018 was outstanding. Look what happened the next 2 years, 2019 and 2020. Look at the far right-hand column with affordability index. Look what happened to it. It inched up and inched up. But once again, if you look all the way on the left-hand column, look where home prices went. They went up also from 261 to almost to over $300,000. A lot of people in the press are looking just at that left-hand column and saying, look at these home prices. It's unsustainable. What they're failing to do is looking at all the other factors, people's income, where mortgage interest rates are. Now look where they are in 2021, the latest data that came out. This is March of 2021. We're at 173.6. I got to tell you, I'm not an expert, but I read a lot of this stuff, and I listen to people who are pretty smart who say, listen, based upon the numbers here, we are not close to a bubble. Are things going to slow down a little bit with prices? More than likely, yes. But when that happens, you have to look at some of these other factors that come into play. So take a look at the affordability index. That's a much more reliable source of data than it is just looking at, look where home prices are, they're going crazy, it's unsustainable. So, by the way, you can get this if you go to nar.org, or excuse me, realtor.org, you can get this information. They publish it once a month. So what can we learn from brands that failed to adapt when they were faced with major stuff happening in their industries? I'm going to take a look at 3 different brands. I think everybody knows all these brands. And you have your own theories as to why they went under. Some we're going to do a little deeper dive than other ones, but I'm going to relate it after we look at these 3 brands, to things having to do with our industry right now. And should we be looking at our industry and saying, are we going to fail to adapt, or are we going to move forward within our industry?
BlackBerry once reigned as king of the smartphone, selling more than 50 million units at its peak in 2011. The Canadian telecom company was originally named Research in Motion and had tens of millions of customers. It started out creating pagers and handsets, but the first iteration of the smartphone, complete with iconic keyboard, took shape within its first 15 years. At one time, BlackBerry controlled 50% of the smartphone market in the US and 20% globally. In the mid-aughts, BlackBerry phones were everywhere. But demand rapidly declined, and in 2016, BlackBerry stopped manufacturing its own phones. So, what happened? In 1984, 2 Canadian engineering students, Mike Lazaridis and Douglas Fragan, formed Research in Motion. At first, the company dabbled mostly in random projects, an LED system for GM, a local network for IBM, and even a film editing system that won an Oscar in 1998. In 1989, the Canadian phone company Rogers contracted RIM to work on its Mobitex network, a system specifically designed for messaging, giving RIM a leg up as an early expert in mobile messaging. Fast forward to 1996, when RIM created its first 2-way pager. And for the next few years, the company iterated on that design, gradually adding features like a color display, Wi-Fi, instant messaging, and web browsing. In 2002, the company unveiled its first model that could be called a phone. In 2006, RIM added the trackball so users could scroll around the screen.
BlackBerry figured out a way to make its phone indispensable to the wealthy and powerful. And having it really meant something about who you were as a person. It was a status symbol. And that's where we got that name Crackberry. People were almost addicted to it and addicted to that feeling of always being connected.
The BlackBerry had a simple design, an easy learning curve, and was clearly marketed to business professionals. The full keyboard made it possible for them to work outside the office. They could respond to emails, texts, browse the web, basically anything they might need to do at a computer. And there was one other beloved feature, BlackBerry Messenger.
The BBM messaging service was a key component of BlackBerry's success as well, because they figured out really early on that people wanted to have an instant connection to people. They wanted to be able to message back and forth without limits. And being able to BBM also added you to that really exclusive club of BlackBerry-only users.
This convenience, paired with inclusivity, paid off. By 2007, the company was pulling in more than $3 billion in revenue, with a net income of $631 million.
At that point in time, BlackBerry had all these government contracts and big business deals, and those deals in turn spurred more consumer adoption. So at that point, BlackBerry was just dominating the US market.
So with all those contracts and dollar signs, the company had nothing to worry about, right?
The problem with them is really sort of in the bottom 40 there. It's this stuff right here. They all have these keyboards that are there whether you need them or not to be there. But what we're going to do is get rid of all these buttons and just make a giant screen. A giant screen.
The iPhone was something consumers had never seen before. The iPhone was a full touchscreen device, and that was a shock and delight consumers.
It wasn't the fact that there was no well-established BlackBerry App Store, although that was big. Comparatively, Android and Apple were more top of mind for app developers. BlackBerry wasn't. The phones missed out on a bunch of features that appealed to consumers, like front and back cameras. These shortcomings ultimately led to RIM's downfall. RIM's global market share began a downward spiral, going from 20% in 2009 to less than 5% in 2012. By the time RIM finally released its spec-competitive touchscreen phone in 2013, it was just too late. That same year, RIM officially changed its name to BlackBerry. BlackBerry thought its loyal customers would wait around for it. Spoiler, they didn't. At this point, people were locked into either iPhone or Android. And in the last quarter of 2016, out of 432 million smartphones sold worldwide, only 207,900 were BlackBerry devices, which officially made RIM's smartphone market share 0%. And in 2016, Chinese consumer electronic company TCL essentially bought the BlackBerry phone brand, which led to their departure from the smartphone market 14 years after the release of its first phone. But the phones live on, sort of.
Introducing the new BlackBerry Classic with more power and control than ever before.
The deal was for TCL to design and manufacture BlackBerry hardware, while the BlackBerry company provides the software. Today's BlackBerry phones still have the iconic keyboard, but run on Android, not the BlackBerry OS, giving users their beloved App Store and much more customization options. The phones are still marketed to a specific type of user, people who want enhanced privacy and security features, with the marketing materials spotlighting the phone's security protections and battery life. But the latest BlackBerry phone, the Key 2, was released in 2018. These days, a new model comes along every year, and 2019 has come and gone without any new BlackBerries. Whether we see a new BlackBerry anytime soon or not, the phones will always be a brick in the foundation of smartphone history. A fitting place for a company so set in its ways that it cemented its own demise.
So, I got to come clean. I was a BlackBerry user. I was a diehard BlackBerry user for a number of years, back when it was at a really high peak. And I adopted the Android system fairly early on, but I understood that BlackBerry was not innovating even back then. So what was it? At one time, it had 50% of the US market in smartphones. Just think about that. It wasn't that long ago. It was only 15, 16 years ago. 50% of the market. And you heard just a second ago, their market share is now 0. How can you go from 50% to 0 in 16 years? It just blows me away. Their push button keyboard was considered innovative, and they were very, very slow to move to the touchscreen type of platform. They just held on and wouldn't let it die, which at the end of the day, that was another part of their demise. So what happened? Obviously, Apple was introduced by iPhone in 2007. As you saw Steve Jobs just a second ago there, kind of making fun of the BlackBerry phones by saying, what's wrong with these devices? Well, just look, the bottom 40% is what's wrong with them. It was considered an expensive toy, the iPhone was. So they didn't take their competition seriously. And they failed once again to keep up with that touchscreen technology. Their stock traded at $150 a share. It's now $10 a share. So they're essentially in the toilet. They just did a lot of things. They just kind of were set in their ways and didn't want to look outside to see what was happening in the industry around them. Here's another company, Rolodex. Now, for anybody that is probably, I'm going to say, I don't know, 45-ish, if you didn't have a Rolodex on your desk, you just weren't, you didn't have a good desk. Everybody had a Rolodex on their desk. It was essentially the original database where you kept all your contacts. Everything was in your Rolodex. And you can go back and read about the history of Rolodex. These things were even part of major lawsuits when people would go from one company to another. They would take their Rolodex with them, and then their previous employer would sue them to get back the database. It was incredible how much market share Rolodex had. Well, what's happened? They were ill prepared to make any kind of transition to the digital world. They weren't prepared for it. They still aren't prepared for it. One of the things that you're going to find with Rolodex, if you go to their websites today, they still exist, and you can buy them at any of these, any of the office stores. But they now issue a digital program to print the punch-out cards. Are you kidding me? They have fallen so far behind. If I was Rolodex and I saw my whole business move into a digital world, I think I'd be moving there. They have totally lost it, lost their way, and because they're just kind of a footnote in office history at this point in time. MySpace, another company. For those of you that are as old as me, MySpace was kind of like the Facebook before Facebook. It had at one time over 100 million accounts worldwide, and that was in 2006. It was kind of, once again, the precursor to all this social media that we're looking at today. But what happened to them? They only focused on music and video files, which, by the way, is a major portion, but they just totally lost it on everything else. They also started, which isn't listed here, they were one of the first entities to try to sell advertising on their sites. So at the end of MySpace, and I think you can still actually get a MySpace account today, but at the end of MySpace, when you went to their site and tried to log on, you had all these ads that were popping up at you, and people just got tired of it, saying, I don't want to do this anymore. In addition, there were massive security breaches with MySpace that caused, once again, their demise. So whether it's BlackBerry or MySpace or Rolodex, you have all these companies that basically over the last 15 to 20 years were at the top of their game, and look where they are today. They're almost, in most cases, non-existent. Why is that? So what can we learn from what we just saw here? I took away a number of different things. First of all, each product was tops in its field, but was slow to adapt and innovate. We have things in our business all the time that are thrown at us that are new things. And by the way, some of these are shiny objects that sometimes you just got to put the blinders on and keep moving forward. But there are major innovations happening in our business that you can't ignore. We're going to talk about a couple of those in a second here. They continue to make products that just worked, not thrilled. That's exactly why iPhone took the market share away from BlackBerry. BlackBerry phones, the original keyboard phone, it just worked. It was really good at working, but it just didn't have the wow factor. They underestimated their competition. In almost every single case here, they didn't look at what was happening around them. And because they failed to do that, they ended up falling further and further behind. And finally, they just didn't listen to their customer. Customers were telling them, listen, I'd like a touch screen as far as BlackBerry is concerned. And BlackBerry was so entrenched, once again, with a digital keyboard. With Rolodex, Rolodex would have been number one with a CRM if only they would have moved to a digital platform earlier than what they did. So these are some of the takeaways that I had from those three companies. Now I'm going to relate it to the real estate business. This is kind of like what we've been dealing with since March of 2020. This storm out there, not only with COVID, but then we're actually hit with this low inventory market, and there's all kinds of innovations that we had to utilize during COVID and what we're experiencing right now, that we're looking at and we're saying, are we embracing this stuff? Or are we saying, well, it's just a temporary fad and it's going to be behind us sooner or later. I'm going to go back to my old ways. I'm looking into the future here. These are my opinions, but I think, if you're in the real estate business and you look at some of this stuff that we've dealt with over the last 15 months, I would venture to say that you should probably take a closer look at some of the things that we're going to talk about here. Here's one of the things that we have been taught in the real estate business. It is a face-to-face business. You look eye to eye with your customer, your client, the builder, whoever it is, and you have all these meetings and you're looking them eye to eye and the handshake's out and everybody's doing business that way. And then look what happened when COVID happened. Learn how to use different forms of communication to serve your clients better. I'm not saying face-to-face is going to go away. I'm not saying that at all. But you're going to have to learn how to communicate with your clients in a lot of different ways, because people have come through this COVID situation, the pandemic, and even how fast we're moving in the market right now. And speed is what kills people right now. And if you're trying to arrange a meeting face-to-face, and today's Wednesday and you're going to meet on Friday, that's too late. You got to do this immediately. So start thinking about not only the face-to-face appointments that you're going to have, but how else are you going to communicate with your clients and customers? Number 2, learn how to lead meetings. Guess what? I've been doing this now for 15 months on a meeting like this. I didn't know what the hell I was doing at the beginning of this. You probably thought the same thing at the first meeting or two, but I've gotten used to it over time. I believe you're going to be spending more and more time in meetings like this with your clients. Face-to-face, very similar to what we just saw with point number 1 here, that you're doing business face-to-face, but you're not really physically face-to-face. You're looking at the other person on a screen. So I would learn how to lead meetings. How and where you're going to do these meetings is going to be essential, in my opinion, to your success in the future. If you haven't led a Zoom meeting, and by the way, Zoom is not the only program out there. As Dan mentioned earlier, they use WebEx. There's a lot of other programs out there that I believe are going to innovate, and you're going to have a lot of different choices here. I've personally used 2 or 3 of them. I still think Zoom is the best, but I look at some of the other features and some of these other conference type videos, and there's some sharp things out there. I believe you as an agent are going to need to get used to this. And if you're not doing this, I think you're going to be left behind. While we're talking about this and doing different types of meetings, I alluded to it our last sales meeting. Our next North Point office meeting is going to be live here at the office on Wednesday, June 16th at 11 a.m. Now, to be frank, I still need to talk about this with Jen and Colleen, because I'm trying to figure out how we're going to do this. But we're going to get it done. A couple things I am going to share with you. Anybody who wants to attend the live meeting is going to need to be vaccinated. You can't show up at the live meeting if you're not vaccinated. It's not fair to everybody who is in the room. Knowing that, and knowing that people, by the way, are accustomed to the Zoom calls, I'm also going to be Zooming at the same time I'm doing a live session in our training room. So I'm going to have a couple different technologies kind of merging together, and we'll get it all mashed together. The first one may not be as smooth as they will be a couple of weeks and months down the road, but we're going to have our next live meeting, the first one in 15 months. So I'll get out more details as the next couple of days go by, because I also want to see how many people are going to show up at a live meeting. I don't want to assume that everybody's going to want to be there. I think we're going to probably have a pretty good mixture of both. Number 3, things that we have thought about and were critical when I trained in the business, and even how we train right now, that property tours are critical to doing business in real estate. Property tours are critical. I think more and more people are going to be previewing prior to in-person showings. What do I mean by that? I believe that more and more people are going to expect Matterport tours or versions of Matterport tours. I believe there's going to be more and more people that are going to look to you as a real estate agent and say, listen, I've looked at this online. I have a couple of questions, but I don't want to waste a whole Saturday afternoon traveling to and from the property. Can you do a virtual walkthrough for me? I believe you're going to have to be able to do that in the very near future if you're not doing it already. People are going to want you as an agent to walk through knowing that you know exactly what your client is looking for. You're going to go into these properties and you're going to focus on that part of the property that might not be seen in a Matterport tour or in a static photo, but they're going to trust you as the agent to say, help me out here, do a virtual property tour for me. I think that's coming up fairly quickly. It's important to see the property. People constantly were saying in the past, I want to see the property. I want to make sure what's around the property. I want to make sure of this or that. I don't think sight unseen offers are going away anytime soon. I don't think they're going to be as prevalent as they were over the pandemic, but I think people have started to use them. Both agents and clients have started to use them. They're going to now start getting into properties. I believe we're going to look back on this time and say, you know what? This wasn't a bad thing. This really wasn't a bad thing. Along this line, now when I say it's not a bad thing, I'm not telling you, please don't get me wrong, go out there and sell all your property sight unseen. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying I think our clients are getting used to buying things online. Which I didn't make part of this meeting, I downloaded a study of what happened during the pandemic with car sales and what car sales being bought online prior to the pandemic versus after the pandemic. They've almost done a 180 in their business. They've had to pivot on the fly. I think real estate's a little different than that. However, I do think our percentages will go up. Now, having said that, I get a number of different things from people from time to time saying, where's that clause? Where's that sight unseen clause? Or where is that? How do I renegotiate the low appraisal after the fact? I'm willing to go up a little bit, but not the whole way. And I have shared this with everybody in the past in these calls, but I'm going to keep doing it until it sinks in up here. In Dotloop, if you go on up to the very top, you'll see highlighted there the templates icon. If you click on that, in the left-hand column, about halfway down, is a line item called clauses. Now, the unfortunate thing is when you open up templates for the first time, a lot underneath documents, that's expanded and it's about this long, which means the clauses link is actually below the crease and you can't see it unless you scroll down. But when you scroll down and click on clauses, that's where you're going to find these pre-written clauses that our attorneys put together and you can utilize in your agreements. By the way, you see in the burgundy portion there, where it says plus new clause, you as an agent, if you start using clauses over and over again, you can add your own special clauses. Just make sure that they're approved either by an attorney, or if you use it once, it's not really, doesn't have legal ramifications, but it might be this long and you don't want to reproduce it again, put it in your new clause section and you'll have access to it. And oh, by the way, it's just in your Dotloop, anything that you put into the clause section. Here's the sight unseen clause, which you can find in the clause section. Number 5, agents are important to interpret data. I've heard this from people outside of our industry saying, hey, agents are going to go away because, you know, we don't need agents to, you know, draw up contracts anymore because I can draw up a contract, or we don't need them for this, we don't need them for that because I can find all this stuff online. I don't disagree with that. However, here's the issue. Do you as an agent know where to find the data? There are more and more websites and resources out there that are available to you as a data. And by the way, this is why I think we're more important than ever before. This is confusing as hell to the public because there's so many different ways that they can go. Now, I'm just going to list a couple here, and I have some logos up on the screen. I know my list of real estate websites in my bookmarks is like that long. This is just a short list of them. Know how to use Remind. Know where the Megan's Law website is. James White mentioned earlier on in this meeting about knowing where the flood zones are because they changed to be a FEMA. Know in Bright, and I get that people had some problems with Bright at the very beginning of this. Bright has incredible resources as far as market statistics are concerned that you can get in and drill down to around properties, things that we never had access to in the past. I'm not going to go through all these. These are just some of the things that you should, as an agent, have bookmarked on your browser so that you can go at the drop of a hat and provide information to your clients and interpret that data. If you don't have these things bookmarked and you aren't on these sites, your clients are going to be ahead of you. And finally, I believe in the past, settlements brought it all together and we all sat around a settlement table, which was a great thing. We all sat and we smiled at each other and we hand over keys and we talk about kids and we talk about, you know, the past seller and what they did. I'm going to bring it back to reality now. What did we do during COVID? We had remote settlements where nobody was there, and guess what? Things still happened. And I believe what's going to happen in the very near future is I'm not sure we're all going to gather around the table anymore. And it's happening across the country right now in various states that have remote notarization. Think about this. I get that we all want to sit around the table and you want to look and sit next to your buyer or seller client and hand them a gift and thank them in person, and that's great. But think about what goes on at the settlement table and how we get there. The buyer's agent sets it up with the title company. I'd like to hold this on Friday at 9 a.m. And they get in touch with the buyer, and the buyer says, well, you know, I can make it, but my spouse can't because she can't get off work. And then you try to contact the other agent and they say, well, I can make that work, but I'm going to have to move around some appointments. And you get in touch with the other party and they say, not going to work. I'm on vacation that week. I can do things over the phone though. How many parties show up at the settlement table? Then you got the mortgage company, the title company. Everybody's got to coordinate a schedule. That's a problem. And that is a friction point, whether we all want to believe it or not. I believe in the very near future, because of what we just went through, we're all going to be doing things via remote, on websites, and notarization is going to occur. It's not going to happen tomorrow in Pennsylvania, but it's going to happen. And when that happens, the floodgates are going to open. We're going to have to adapt. So I just went through some things that happened in the real estate business and also outside of our business. We've just gone through a very tumultuous time and we're getting back to normal. I agree with that, but I think there's some things that we experienced during that pandemic that were turmoil, and turmoil stimulates. The gentleman who said this, his name is Thomas Leonard, who's since passed away. He was the founding father of what was referred to as the professional life coaching. Everybody seems that we talk about today, or we can find them, and they all seem to be a dime a dozen, that they're life coaches. But this was the first person that actually sat down and said, I got a system. And one of the things that he consistently said over and over again is, turmoil happens in personal lives and business lives. And when it happens, it stimulates how we think and how we react to what's going on around us. So hope you got something out of today. Once again, I'm going to get out some additional information. Our next meeting is going to be, I got to get used to getting out of the habit of saying our next Zoom meeting. It is going to be a live and Zoom meeting, but I'll get that information out to everybody and we'll take it from there. And hopefully it won't come off like the first time I'm doing this in 15 months. Have a great day, everybody.